Hi, everybody. It's Bob Ost. Yep, it's me again. Week 122, for those of you who are counting. 122 consecutive weeks of doing community gatherings on Fridays. Uh, we usually open the room at around 5 o'clock and meet our guests at about 5:30, which is going to happen very soon. Um, we did this because of COVID. Hopefully, a lot of you who are watching us know this by now, but we made a pivot because I had a company to run and I wasn't able to do any live programs. So what are you going to do? Um, I sort of took the leap of faith and got myself a Zoom account. And then once I had the Zoom account, I asked people whether they wanted to meet on Fridays and maybe feel a little less isolated. And there was a unanimous wave of yes across the internet, across the true internet. So we started doing these, and I brought in guests every week. Um, Primary purpose is really for everybody to feel like they're part of a community and to feel less lonely back when it was shut down. We're not in shutdown anymore. We're kind of going live. We've kind of gone live, but it's still kind of half-hearted. You know, considering they just brought out a new COVID vaccine specifically to deal with Omicron, uh, you have to sort of acknowledge that it's still happening. It hasn't disappeared. We're still dealing with it, but I think we're dealing with it more comfortably now. So just remember, everybody, that even though if you're not susceptible to COVID yourself, if you have a strong immune system, you could be coming into contact with other people that aren't as healthy and hearty as you, and you could spread it to them, and you don't want to do that. So let's just remember we're on a planet, a big planet with a lot of people, and let's just think about other people as much as we can. That's my little platform there. But so what do we've been talking about all sorts of things over the year. Actually, this is kind of interesting. The very first guest I had was a musical guest. It was Ted Arthur. Ted Arthur had been conducting virtually an overture to Merrily We Roll Along for Sondheim's birthday anniversary party online. Do you remember that? That's 2.5 years ago, guys. So music has always been sort of in the background and foreground of True. It's part of my life. I actually am a playwright, composer, lyricist. And I always ask people for things that they want to talk about, things that they want to hear about. And I get a lot of people asking me questions about musicals. And specifically, I've had questions about cast albums and recordings and how important recordings are in order to move your musical forward. Well, we have somebody to ask that question to today who might have some really specific and interesting answers. And I'm going to bring him in right now. His name is Joe Iconis. I think the name might be familiar to a lot of you. And let's see, click, and we go into and we meet Joe. Hey, Joe, welcome to True.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks for saying yes. Joe and I met because we were honoring Jennifer Tepper
Mhm.
from 54 Below a couple, like, actually it was 2016, Joe. And one of the people that is a big fan of hers is Joe. And Joe agreed to come and play at our benefit at Lincoln Center to honor Jennifer. And we were very thrilled to have you. And so that kind of gave me an opening to say, hey, Joe, remember me? Would you come on and talk to us about your writing and maybe about being more chill even? So, Joe, tell us a little bit about what your background is, apart from the things that we already know from social media. How did you get involved in theater? How did you get involved in writing? Um,
Yeah.
why do you do this? Why? Why, I
Why?
say why?
Why on earth? Well, yeah. So my origin story is going all the way back. I'm from Long Island originally, and I have a big Italian family. No one in my family is in the arts or entertainment at all, at all, at all. I'm definitely like the outlier in my family. I do this because I saw the original production of Little Shop of Horrors on September 27th, 1987. It was a gift for my sixth birthday from my dad. It was right before the original production closed. And I immediately fell in love with musical theater from seeing that. It was like a really sort of like TV movie of the week cliched moment where I was just sitting there in the Orpheum Theater, and it was like the love of musical theater was like zapped into me from that show. And so then I became this little kid who was really obsessed with musicals, because I lived so close to the city. For every birthday, holiday, whatever, my gift was always going into the city and seeing a show.
Did we have the same parents? I'm wondering.
You did, yeah, yeah,
I,
absolutely, yeah.
that,
They
that 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 must be it because
they get around.
I've got the same story except I started at 9. I was late. I was a late bloomer.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Got to get in there early.
Okay.
um,
Um,
yeah,
and you also, I notice you know, family is a very important word to you. You refer to everybody that you work with as your family. We use community here. I also like to use family as well. But tell us about your attachment to the word family because I see it a lot in conjunction with your work.
yeah. I mean, I sort of use the word family to describe the group that I perform with. That feels a little bit more like a it feels like a collective or something, or almost like a theater company, more than a more than a rock band or something. I don't know, but
It's back. I could do it if
Oh, wait a second. I got to mute someone. Everybody in the room, please remember to mute yourself. Okay.
yeah.
So back to
um
you, Joe.
yeah. No, that was exciting. Uh, and so yeah, so it's it really sort of I started using it to kind of describe this group of artists that I would perform with in my live shows. But I really love the word, because it's that I believe in fostering community. I really believe in this idea of artists, sticking together. And the way that I like to make art is I like to do it collaboratively. I like whether I'm putting on a concert or making a musical. I like when all of the artists in the room have a seat at the table, and when it's less about protecting your own piece of the pie and more about bouncing ideas off of each other, and it feeling very sort of like an exchange of energy and all that. And so yeah, and so that's why I sort of started using the word family. And I also um, when I first started doing this, be working in the world of musical theater professionally, I really I just I found worth in harboring creative relationships and long-term creative relationships. Um, I really love like classic musical theater, and I love artists who who work together for years and years and years and years. I love like Chita Rivera and Kander and Ebb, and Hal Prince and Stephen Sondheim. I think there's such a great history of that in musical theater, and it just felt like a good way to work to me.
Well, let me ask you this: when did you
Yeah.
write your first show?
I wrote, so I would write like when I was in high school, I would write, just music. I didn't really write lyrics because lyrics intimidated me, but I would always.
So you came to all of this. You came to it from Little Shop of Horrors
Yeah.
and a love of musical theater, but your primary association was as a musician.
So yeah, so I came to the whole thing through music, because when I was really getting into theater as a kid, I started taking piano lessons. And then my piano playing, I sort of had this like preternatural ability to play piano, and I played a lot by ear. I would go to see a show, I would come home, I would like pick out, tunes that I heard on the piano. And so I just started writing songs. It came very naturally to me. And I would write songs that were music only, but they always had like a dramatic context. I would write songs that would be for musical versions of movies that I loved, or for like stories that I would make up. And so I got to NYU. I went to NYU for undergrad and grad school. And at NYU and undergrad, that was the first time that I ever was sort of properly taught songwriting and the sort of basics of songwriting. And my private composition teacher, Steve Rosenhaus, who's a really wonderful writer, he basically said, well, you know, if you're going to write musical theater, you need lyrics. And so you have two choices. You can either find a lyricist, or you can try to write the lyrics yourself. And at the time, I used to be very, very shy. I used to be very sort of, you know, socially awkward. Speaking to people was not the most comfortable thing to me. And I thought, finding a lyricist sounds like I'm really gonna have to like put myself out there and you know, and be brave and speak to people, and that just sounded awful to me. And so I was like, I should really just try to write the lyrics myself. That sounded like a much better idea to me. And then by the end of my time at NYU, the lyric writing was just as important as the music to me.
My quick story was that when I was 11, I taught myself how to play piano. I worked with a music teacher in Philadelphia, and I started writing things, and he was interested that I was interested in music, and he gave me a book on harmony, and I went through it, and I was writing things. I started writing pieces, and I started writing pieces through my teens, and then when I went to University of Pennsylvania, I submitted some of the pieces to Dr. Richard Wernick in the music department, and he told me to stop writing music until I learned how to do it.
Great.
Yeah, that was very helpful.
Yeah, thank you.
So I actually came from it more comfortably from the lyric point of view, from the lyric side and the play side of it. And then I found my way to music later. Yeah. After I licked my wounds and they healed.
Yeah, after you learn how to do it. Yeah. As we know, there's a right way and a wrong way to create art. Yeah, so my first proper musical that I wrote was my thesis in grad school at NYU, which was this show called The Black Suits, which is a musical about a high school garage band in Garden City, Long Island, trying to win a battle of the bands. And it was sort of like the thing that it was the thing that most people sort of knew me by for a while. You know, at the time when I wrote it, there was not anything that felt like a young show. It was the year before Spring Awakening came out, and so for a while it was kind of like the hip, you know, in development show in New York.
You had it done at Barrington Stage, is that right?
Yeah, we did it. Yeah, we ended up doing it at Barrington and at CTG in LA. Yeah.
So that was an auspicious start.
It was also kind of strange because it was really hyped. I had a very sort of a bizarre kind of entree into the musical theater world where it was very hyped, and it was in development at a very fancy New York City nonprofit theater, and it was going to be their first ever musical, and then that all kind of fell apart. And so as much as it felt like a big, you know, it felt like both a huge thing and like a weird sort of disappointment.
Well, I wanted to get a lot of stuff that people don't know into this before we turn to Be More Chill.
Yeah.
So give us the story of Be More Chill, and particularly at what point did you start writing it? When did you bring on a collaborator, or was your collaborator with you from the beginning? You had somebody doing the book, right?
Yeah. Joe Trace, the great Joe Trace.
Yeah. And I guess the things that I kind of want to know are, weave into it the story of your demos, because people want to know about demos and people want to know about cast albums, and you have both, I think, that have sort of helped the life of your show.
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, what I'll say off the bat about demos for me is that I've gotten better, but I've classically been awful about making demos. I'm very old school in the way that I think about writing musical theater. I think of songs in musical theater as being music and lyric, and I think that you should be able to sit at a piano and sing the song and be able to communicate what that song is. I'm not a big proponent of like, you need to have something be fully orchestrated in order to like understand the song in musical theater. And I'm awful at like anything involving computers.
Well, but I have to say, we take the opposite approach to that. We take the idea that if you feel like you need the full orchestration to understand the song, then you better go back to the song and make sure that it's actually working. We do our workshop, and we discourage people from using any kind of orchestrations. We want to hear the song and the piano.
I love that. I love that so much. Because I mean, yeah, I truly believe that's, that's just what it is. That's what theater writing is. But yeah, so for me, my demos are usually something that I'll do kind of after the fact, after something's already written. And if I end up doing them, it's exclusively to, just get something, good, nice sounding that it will be something that will allow a producer or a theater or whoever, to hear it and get it. But a demo for me is never part of like my creative process, or rarely part of my creative process.
I know
But
it's considered part of the creative process. Sometimes we think that it's part of our marketing.
for sure.
It's a marketing tool that we use so that people can get to know what our show is.
Absolutely, absolutely. But as far as Be More Chill goes, the sort of origin of that was I was kind of looking for some new projects to start. I wanted to write something that felt kind of like a traditional musical comedy, and my agent at the time read Be More Chill because it was a book first by the late great Ned Vizzini. And my agent read it, and he said, "I read this book. I don't know if it's a musical. I don't know what it is, but it reminded me of you, and just give it a read." And
That's an interesting thing to say.
I know. Yes, funny and sad at the same time. But it reminded him of me, and so I read it. And when I read it, it was kind of this immediate like, oh yeah, this should be a musical, and I know exactly how to turn this book into a musical. It felt very like it felt easy. And I knew that I wanted to collaborate on the book with somebody. Joe Trace was a writer who I'd never worked with before and never met, but I was a fan of his plays. And so I had the book, Be More Chill, and I took a meeting with Joe Trace, and he was familiar with the book because he had worked at a bookstore for many years and really loved YA novels. And we had a conversation, and it felt like a good fit. And then we both had a relationship with Two River Theater, him because he knew John Diaz, just from his work as a playwright.
I was going to ask you how you got to. So prior to Two Rivers Theater was like your first. You must have done. I'm sure you did table reads. You did something before you jumped into the. Or no,
Yeah.
you went right to the Two River Theater.
Yeah, because it was a commission. So it was yeah. So we brought them the idea, the sort of whole package, and they said, oh yeah, we'd love to commission you guys to write this.
At that point, what had you done prior to Be More Chill? I don't know the chronology of your work. I know there's Broadway Bounty Hunters. I think is now, and I know there were a lot of other shows, but I don't know what was before Be More Chill.
Yeah, so Be More Chill.
I guess what I want to find out is how did you develop a strong enough reputation that somebody like a theater would commission you to write a show?
Yeah. So I had done a few things pre Be More Chill. We were commissioned to write it and began writing it in 2012. And so pre that, like I said, I had this show Black Suits, which a lot of people in the industry knew of, even though no one really saw it. And I had done this show called Blood Song of Love at Ars Nova. It was Ars Nova's first proper musical. There was a lot of hype arothat show as well.
That's where Natasha Pierre started too, isn't it?
It was, yeah. Natasha Pierre was their next musical. It was, yeah. That show had a better trajectory than mine. I did the show before theirs, which was a rock and roll spaghetti western musical, and that was it. That was a show that I loved a lot and really believed in, and it felt very buzzy. And then it got a really bad New York Times review, and it was just done. It was over with. But so I had that, and then I have a very active concert, sort of performative cabaret life, and so I had done that kind of stuff. But that was sort of it as far as like major things. The reason that Two River knew me was because NYU has a relationship with Two River, because the great Sarah Schlesinger, who runs that program, has worked with John Diaz for years and years and years. And so they were doing a cabaret of NYU students. The NYU students were doing songs at Two River. And because I was an alum, they asked me if I wanted to come and do a song of mine. And so I did, and the people at the theater really liked my song, and so they did another NYU cabaret. And the next year, the people at the theater were like, "Hey, could you ask that guy who sang that song we liked last year to come back and do another one?" And I did, and really, that's why they commissioned me, because they heard my stuff and they liked it.
That's great. I can't help but be a little envious, but it's wonderful that you had such breaks that opened up for you. And so many of us are frustrated, and I guess we're looking for secrets, and I don't know if there are any secrets. It's just things just happen. It just happens to be the path you're on. It happens to be the people that you meet. Um,
Yeah, and it's it's all in my career, at least, nothing has ever happened the way that I intended it to. It's never like, yeah, for me at that time, the Blood Song of Love was such a crushing disappointment for me, because I really thought that was going to be the thing that would sort of propel my work to the next level. Not that I wasn't beyond thrilled with the Ars Nova production; it was incredible. But I wanted more, as I think we all always want more.
so why are you so sure that it doesn't have a future life? Why wouldn't you bring it out and show it to somebody and say, what do you think this could have another chance?
Oh, I mean, I'm always hopeful, but no one's, it hasn't in the subsequent 12 years. I think it would be great. I love it. A rock and roll spaghetti western. Who wouldn't be into it? But yeah, always open to anything. But I've got a few, I've written many musicals, and sort of like I'm a really good and active hustler, but you can kind of like only hustle so many at one
Well,
time.
let's talk about that for a second, because tell us how you found your way to social media with Be More Chill. How the hell did you get 350 online listens of your show? How do you
Um,
do that?
I didn't do anything. Like, honestly, that's the honest answer is with Be More Chill. Basically what happened was that, like, literally every show I've ever done, there was a huge amount of buzz leading up to the opening of that show. We opened in at Two River Theater, which is a gorgeous regional theater in Red Bank, New Jersey. We opened in June of 2015, and there's a lot of buzz. This was exactly 2 months before Dear Evan Hansen opened out of town. And we opened up, and the New York Times once again came and gave it a bad review, and that was it. Nobody cared about it. All the producers who had booked tickets canceled their tickets. Like, it's just
No.
it's just what happens. Like, it's for a show like that, for a show that doesn't have a famous person in it, that wasn't written by a famous person, that isn't based on a popular piece of IP. That's just what it is. It was a strange little musical, and yeah, and so it was kind of killed, and that was that. The guy who is the head of the board of the theater, his name was Bob Recknitz. He died a couple years ago. A really incredible guy. He loved the show. He just loved it. He thought it was great, and he really believed that it deserved a cast album. And so he raised the money for us to get in the studio and make a cast album. And so we made the album fairly soon after we closed. The album came out in October, so we closed in July. It came out in October of 2015, and it just kind of sat there in the way most musical theater albums do, with the exception of very few. People listened to it because people were kind of familiar with my stuff, and by that time, I had a couple songs on Smash, and I sort of I've always sort of had a kind of culty following because of my live performance work and my sort of live performance life with Iconis and family. So people liked it, but it didn't set the world on fire or anything. And then in 2017, so like around 2 years later, I just started noticing people talking about Be More Chill on social media. I just started noticing people doing like fan art, people doing covers of the songs kind of out of nowhere. And it was really strange. And a lot of the attention was focused on the song Michael in the Bathroom, which is sung by George Salazar in the show. And I'm very close with many of the people who are in my stuff, and I'm very good friends with George. And I remember calling George and saying, are you doing something with Be More Chill? Like, is something going on? And he was like, no, I was going to ask you the same thing. Like, why are people caring about Be More Chill all of a sudden? And neither of us knew. And it kept growing and growing, where it just was like, oh, all of, these kids were discovering the show and falling in love with it. And so as soon as I realized that was a thing that was happening, I was like, okay, how can I wrangle this and use it to try to get another production of this show, which in the subsequent 2 years, nobody wanted anything to do with. I could not get one production of Be More Chill to save my life. And so then I set out contacting theaters and producers and the record company and everyone, and basically no one cared. Basically everyone was just kind of like, oh, it's so sweet that people are tweeting about your show. How cute of you that you think that means anything. And we just kept pushing, and everyone who was on the album, everyone who was in the show really like threw gasoline on the fires that were there and interacting with fans, because it was exciting for us. We were like, oh my gosh, someone actually cares about this thing that we loved so much. And so so it kept growing and growing and growing. Through that excitement, I was able to get producer Jerry Goring interested in the show, and Jerry Goring, partnering with Jennifer Ashley Tepper, decided to mount the show off Broadway in the summer of 2018. And that's what happened. It was really a huge gamble to do the show off Broadway, because we didn't know if any of these people who were listening to it would actually buy tickets, but they did. And that was kind of it.
The thing that we've learned is that you didn't do anything to get 350 million listens on your cast album. The thing that I wasn't clear about was whether it was the cast album or whether you had done that. And so I didn't realize that the cast album was made right after Two Rivers, which is great.
Yeah,
what a great thing. I have to acknowledge this to people that are watching on YouTube. I don't know what's going on with my green screen. I'm just
it's very artsy.
Know that I know that there's a green blob attacking me in back of me. But we have to go on, and I can't seem to get my lighting adjusted so that it stops doing this. So Joe, I know we have a couple questions in the chat that we're finally getting to the area that they're asking about. We know that you moved originally to Off Broadway, and by the way, Lisa Dozier King is one of my dear friends. I adore Lisa.
Yeah,
and I think that Kim Vasquez was also on. Yeah, she's a friend. I'm going to be seeing her in a couple weeks.
Yes, great.
I think you had a bunch of friends that were on your team, which is great. We're going to talk about what happened between Two Rivers and the Off-Broadway show. Were there any changes made? Was there anything that changed in it at all? You just moved it as it was into an Off-Broadway presentation, or was anything had to be adjusted for Off-Broadway?
Yeah, a ton changed.
Okay.
It's myself and my collaborators. We always hoped and assumed that we would go from the production at Two River to another production, be that one in New York or another regional theater. And so when we opened at Two River, it kind of felt like, all right, this is what we've done for now, and we have to open this here, and this is our first production, and we'll get a chance to keep the work going on the next one. And then the next one never came. And so once it was clear that the show was going to open again off Broadway.
Let me ask you this: the popularity on social media, did that help make the move happen, or just?
Oh, it's 100% responsible, okay. Like 100%.
Okay, yeah. So basically, what the room needs to know is, do nothing and make 350 million hits happen on your show, and maybe you'll make it to off Broadway.
But honestly, yeah,
There are no. This business has no rules.
no,
There's no
no.
game book for this business.
Yeah, I mean, I think, what we did was we made a show that was authentic and honest, and people responded to it, and that's just what happened. And I think that what I can say, which I know from the bottom of my heart, if I tried to write a show with the intent of it having, 500 million listens on streaming sites, it never would have. The reason that people responded to it was because it wasn't trying to pander to them. It wasn't like, oh, what can we make that the kids are going to love? We just made a musical that we thought was good, and that we thought was honest and truthful. And just because you make a musical that is honest and truthful doesn't mean that anyone's going to care. But in this case, magic happened and people did, and it just hit something, and that was it. But it's really, it's really just word of mouth. It was the most sort of old school way for anything to take off. It just happened through social media.
And in terms of social media, was the majority of the focus on Michael in the bathroom, or it was most of it was Michael in the bathroom? So everybody in the room, write Michael in the bathroom.
But even, but that, it's like all of this stuff, Michael in the bathroom, it's a song that I wrote, and I liked the song a lot. But George Salazar and his performance, the collaboration that we have, and we only have the collaboration because we've been working together for years. His performance of the song elevated it into something that was bigger than either of us, and bigger than either of our pieces of the pie. You know what I mean? And so it's like and again, just because you make something like that doesn't mean that people are gonna respond to it in the way they did for the song. But that is what happened. The special thing that I think people recognized in that came out of just a collaboration that was very pure and very honest and very open. And it's it's not the kind of thing where like, oh yeah, George Salazar did the role for 3 years and then I star casted it when we had the time to premiere it, which is like what happens a lot. It's like, no, the guy who like made this role got to do it on stage, and then the result was something that people responded to.
So we've got it up to off Broadway, and we're going to talk about the transfer from Broadway to Broadway. But the question to keep in mind as we're talking about this, Donald wants to know if you can compare and contrast the experiences of off Broadway versus Broadway versus off West End and versus West End versus Chicago. Okay, well, yeah. I don't know. I don't know. Were you in Chicago?
We didn't open it. We were supposed to, but then COVID canceled it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you won't have that part of the answer. So let's talk about when your producers moved you off Broadway. Was that a conservative move on their part, and that they actually were thinking that they wanted to see how it would be before they moved to Broadway, or was Broadway an afterthought with off Broadway?
No, I mean off Broadway was such a major gamble. Like off Broadway is hard. Commercial off Broadway is hard, if not impossible.
It's hard. It's harder than Broadway in many ways because
it is. Yeah,
you can't charge a ticket price that will actually make enough money for you to run.
Correct. And so truly, we didn't know if anyone was going to buy a ticket, and so it was kind of like, let's just see what happens with this thing, because there'd been no precedent. Like there was no such thing as a show that opened in New York City because it had been, listened to the extraordinary amount of times this cast album was listened to. Like that literally had never happened before. So we didn't know if people were going to care. And so,
but it was a good reason to actually take a gamble. Everybody thought
it was a good
chance.
It was a good reason for one person. Yeah. I spoke to a lot of people, and there was one. Actually, that's a lie. There was two people, and I ended up going with Jerry. But
so let's talk about that, because this will be very interesting to the writers in the room.
Yeah.
What was it that made you decide to go with one producer versus the other? You don't have to be specific, we don't know who the other producer is, so you can be as specific as you want.
Yeah, and both producers were really, really wonderful, really amazing. Honestly, it was because in my conversation with the other producer, they talked a lot about stunt casting. They talked a lot about trying to get like a like not a pop star, but someone who kids liked to be, one of the leads in the show, and I just wasn't interested in doing that. And so it was kind of as simple as that. And so my gut, like this other person who was very much like, I think that this is a show for, you know, people who feel like they don't belong. And so that's who it should, you know, that's who should populate this musical. I was like, yeah, but I think too.
So what was the impetus to make them decide to try to move it from off Broadway to Broadway?
I mean, it was purely the ticket sales. So like the off Broadway production was like a bonanza. Like it was just like, it was 100% sold out. The business was like nuts. The business was insane. And so so, you know, what happened was at that time, I had not had a show, you know, run in New York. My last show to run in New York City was Blood Song of Love. My only show to run in New York City, you know, off Broadway. It was Blood Song of Love, and I couldn't
off Broadway, but prestigious, because Ars Nova is very well respected.
Yeah, but I could not, you know, believe that I was going to have a show running off Broadway in New York City. And so for me, I was like, this is all I want. This is all I want to just see how this thing goes if we ran it off Broadway. And you know, the second tickets started selling in the way that they were, then it all of a sudden became like, okay, now it's feeling like maybe there's the possibility for this thing to move forward. And the whole time I was like, Joe, don't even think about that. Just try to enjoy this. Just try to appreciate these 10 weeks in New York City. Don't think about what's happening next. Just think about like the now, you know? But
as long as your producer was thinking about what was happening next, that's fine.
It became impossible. And so then the momentum's building. We were 100% sold out by the time our preview started. And so then it became, if you get the Times review this time, this thing's gonna move, because there was just such insane momentum behind it. And so it was all, you know, opening night, all heading there, and Times review comes out, and it's another pan of the show. So now that the second pan that Be More Chill has had, this like little musical that could, literally made by people who love musical theater, just viciously attacked in the New York Times yet again. And so like the opening night of Be More Chill off Broadway was just like, it was awful, truly awful. It was so depressing. People were coming up to me and saying, I'm so sorry, like it was a funeral because of the Times review. And that's just what it was, right? And
a funeral with a full house.
Yeah, but man, it's like, it does not matter. It's like for a show like that, you just need that, you need that Times review. And so that's just what it was, right? And except the only person who didn't do that was Jennifer Ashley Tepper, who the whole night just kept saying to me, no, we got this. We're doing this. We're not going to do that thing. We're not doing that thing that everyone says you have to do. We're just not. And I didn't believe her. And then we went to Broadway. They, you know, the Schuberts loved the show. And, you know, they said, let's take a chance on this thing. And so we got to Broadway based solely on the enthusiasm of the human beings who came to see it, and the excitement about the show.
Well, your show will be remembered as a phenomenon. It's not going to be remembered as something that got a bad Times review.
Oh yeah. Oh no. I don't.
The thing that's interesting though is what you did. What you did is what we all need to do, and we can't do it consciously. It just has to happen, like you said. It just happened. You hit a zeitgeist. You touched into a zeitgeist. The problem was it may not have been the strongest zeitgeist for a Broadway show. Apparently, that might have been the problem.
I mean, it's just, that just comes down to like, you know, economics. I mean, we lasted for 6 months on Broadway, and I'm so insanely grateful for it.
You got a Tony nomination, didn't you?
Yeah, I did, but the Tonys were terrible. Bad.
Oh, okay.
We got that, you know, the whole time on Broadway, it was just very challenging because then we got another terrible Times review on Broadway. So Be More Chill has received 3 awful New York Times reviews. And which just seems like overkill to me for, again, a show that really is
Hey, I heard you the first time, guys.
Yeah, like, just can't you just, like, bow out or something? But whatever, they couldn't. It was so thrilling that they decided to write 3 terrible ones. But the third one, that was just like, we're not lasting on Broadway with the New York Times.
You kept going for 6 months. That's pretty impressive.
I'm very, and it's like so grateful, and people, actual human beings, really did love the show, but it was such an uphill battle because there was a real sense of like snobbery about the show. It really felt like people came to it. Some people, a certain sort of audience member would come to it being like, I've heard this is a kids show, and there was a lot of that kind of vibe going on, and that's like a hard thing to get past, but I'm so beyond proud of what we did. And it's like, it's weird because I wrote the show, and so I'm really,
so I gotta say, you've gotten through this all beautifully. Did a therapist help, or what got you, because you seem to have a very realistic grasp of what you went through, and many people would have just run away and hid under the bed or something.
I'm resilient. Yeah. I'm a musical theater survivor. I love theater,
There's a t-shirt, everybody. I'm a musical theater survivor.
We all are. If we're doing it, this is not an easy business. There's very few of us who are touched by an angel and can just go to the top very quickly. There are a few, but
No, I should know this, but was it the same producing team off Broadway that brought it to Broadway?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So that didn't change. Mm-hmm. So in terms of your experience of off Broadway versus Broadway, I don't know what you could tell Donald that would be enlightening, but I think,
yeah.
Is there any key difference other than the fact that off Broadway is impossible to actually run a show, and Broadway is impossible because you need a Times review? It's a hard business. Okay, let's just say it's a hard business.
It's a hard business, but also the thing that I've found is that every professional situation, to me at least, is really no different than doing shows in high school. Like, it's all really the same. It's the buildings change, the amount of people in the room change. Maybe if I wrote musicals like Moulin Rouge or something, or King Kong, maybe then it would be like, oh, well, when you do a show on Broadway, you have a 50-foot gorilla.
Do not aspire to King Kong.
But yeah, no,
it's all a favor.
But so it's like, it's for me, for the things that I'm doing, and for the musicals that I like and want to see, it's like it's all the same. Gets the circumstances change a little bit.
One of our writers, by the way, says now she's kind of hoping for a bad review based on his story. Her show's going to be done. She's hoping for that bad review now.
Don't hope for it.
You've reframed it for us. You've reframed the whole idea. Let me go to questions, because there were a bunch of them. Nancy Genster wants to know, did you worry about putting your best material onto a cast album, even when copyright protected, in the very early stage of its life, for risk of getting early rejection from critics? What about after your first rewrites and the trouble of making later changes to lyrics, subtext, plot? So that a very simple part of this question is, how different is the show now from what's on the original cast album?
It's pretty different. There's a new song, lots of rewriting. I used to sort of have the notion of the sort of old school notion of you would never do a cast album until you have the most perfect version of your show. I think that's just sort of, I think it's an outdated way of thinking, even though it's the way that feels the most correct to me. People just receive media differently now. We're less rigid about things like the parameters of albums, and so the Two River cast recording of Be More Chill exists, and a Broadway cast recording of Be More Chill exists. And even if I wasn't lucky enough to make the Broadway cast recording, there are 10 million ways that I could put out the rewrites into the world for free, And so for me, it's, it wasn't, when we did the Two River album, it wasn't like, oh, I don't want to put the stuff out there before it's done. It was like, this is our one shot of ever doing this. Like, that album was like that album, felt like it felt like an epitaph. You know, it wasn't like a this is the next step. It was like oh, this is memorializing this thing that's probably
what's your
done.
label for the Two Rivers?
Ghostlight.
Oh, it's Ghostlight.
Yeah.
I guess what people are wondering. So okay, you just basically gave them the answer. It's you think that it's an old way of thinking for us to think that we should hold back on doing a cast recording until the perfect production. You
I think
actually
I think
can
so.
also demonstrate the fact that you had the Two River cast recording and also you had the Broadway cast recording. The other thing that you didn't
Which was
mention is
which was lucky because like I know that it's like easy for me to say like, oh, just do another cast recording. But I think it's an outdated way of thinking. But again, it's the way that feels correct to me. And if I was like Lin-Manuel famous, I would probably be like, no, I'm gonna hold on to my stuff until I want to release it. But you know, I can't. I gotta like release it when there's an opportunity to.
and the other when you were approached about doing the cast recording after Two River production, did you have any doubts? Did you have any qualms about it? Did you say, yeah, let's do it?
I was I said, yeah, let's do it. And honestly, for as much as I fight very, very hard for my projects and for the things that I believe in, and I I do everything but show up at people's homes, you know, asking them to put the things on a stage or read something. Or I'm as you know, as hustle forward as you can be for a writer. But the cast recording of Be More Chill, I was so exhausted by I had a few. I got fired from a huge job the week after Be More Chill opened. And I was so kind of disappointed by what had happened with Be More Chill that I didn't even really fight for it. It was something that was a real sort of magic thing where the opportunity arose, and I was kind of like, okay, sure.
Well, it's
That
not
would
just
be
the
nice.
opportunity; it's actually somebody who's willing to fund it. Because, well, let me ask you this: how many pieces in your orchestra for the Two Rivers? Is it like small? It must have been small.
I think it was six, maybe.
Six.
Yeah.
Yeah. So could have been $100,000 or more for the cast album.
Oh
No.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't think you can do a cast album for under 100,000 unless there's like two people in it. Like unless it's
Right.
like a two-person and piano.
And then the Broadway one must have cost a couple $100,000.
Probably around there. Yeah, it's very expensive to make these albums.
Do you happen to know? This is a business question. Do you happen to
Yeah.
know whether your producers had already put money into the budget, into the Broadway budget for a cast album, or did they have to raise additional money for the cast album?
I think I think that the money was already in there, but in the case of that was the only time it's ever been easy for me insofar as like raising money for an album because we were coming off of this Two River album being, the most successful non like Broadway musical theater album of all time or something. It was like the Two River album was such a like bizarre, monster hit that it was kind of easy to be like, oh sure, we'll just do another album. People were more willing to like throw money at the album than they were production.
How are the sales comparatively between the two albums?
Well, it's like less sales.
I have a feeling your fans probably buy both.
Yeah. It's less album and more just streams, which is like the craziest thing. But the Two River has more. The Two River like out streams the Broadway one because people are really attached to the original, and that's something that I had to face in a huge way. People who were super fans of the Two River cast album got really angry when we changed stuff for Broadway, which is which is just like that's just what it is. You can't.
It actually doesn't surprise me, but it's like of course they did. Yeah.
And that was the thing that felt like the challenging thing of releasing a cast album when your show is like in process. But at the time you released it, we didn't know if it was in process because we didn't know if we'd ever get to do it again.
So here's a question from Drew, and I think that this didn't happen to you. Are there reasons, legal or otherwise, for a writer-composer not to release music publicly before a theatrical premiere? You weren't really releasing your music before the Two Rivers production, were you?
No, it was a cast recording of that production. But I mean, I released I've never had a musical that premiered on a stage without songs from it being premiered in concert or online first ever.
Yeah, I would assume. I mean, I would certainly do that myself. I would, if I were
Yeah.
trying to get a production going, I would try to get my songs sung places. I would try to get a good demo. I would do. I know you don't like demos, but I would do a good demo. Um, what different ways of looking at things. Maureen Condon wants to know: did you put the individual songs from the cast album on iTunes or Spotify, or where? Where did people find your songs? You didn't
Um,
do it. You didn't do it. It just sort of happened, apparently. You said that you actually didn't have anything to do with getting your stuff on social media.
oh no. So it's when you release an album now, it's I mean, it's the album was released on iTunes and where you buy music, but I mean, now most people listen to music via streaming. Very few people actually buy albums anymore, like period. It's just all streaming. I just saw someone ask the question, 350 million streams online. What do you get, like $1 each time? It's like a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a penny each time. Truly,
Um,
like,
and now
yeah.
I'm seeing Nico Jewer saying, "How about the song Bob in front of the green screen?" So yeah, that could
Oh,
work.
Donald was just kidding. Sorry, didn't know.
Let's see. Um, these are lots of comments. I'm not seeing questions. So where were the other productions? Did Be Marshall get to the West End?
Yeah, we did. We were at the Other Palace, which is technically an off West End space. It's where that production of Heathers has been playing for quite some time. We did that, and then it was shut down by COVID, which was great timing. And then we did the West End last summer. We did a 10-week run at the Shaftesbury, while and Juliet was on hiatus. And so a few shows did these like sort of brief summer runs, and so we got to do that.
Who was your London producer?
Bill Kentright.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Who else? Okay. Is the show? Jeffrey Lausiegel wants to know: is the show doing well in licensing to the secondary markets? Are you available for licensing at this point?
Yeah, we were available for licensing before New York.
So New York didn't necessarily affect the licensing; it was already available for licensing.
Yeah, and we made the decision to just keep it. We were like, let's just keep it open, let people do it and let people see it in New York. And yeah, I don't think it affected the show.
Oh, Jennifer Cook wants to know what your hustle looks like. What does your hustle look like? How do you pitch yourself?
I'm not a good schmoozer, and I'm not a good like.
Of course you are. Look at you. You're great in conversation. You're a great interviewer.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. No, but I'm good at speaking honestly with people, and so I'm good about saying this thing that I made. I believe in it. I don't know if it's any good or any bad, but I think it's worth your time and checking it out. So I'll say that to anyone. I'm just really good about reaching out to people, about following up with things. I'm very organized. That kind of stuff.
What you don't say is what so many people say to us, to producers, which is, this is the next Hamilton.
I never ever would.
We hear this all the time. Everybody in the room, never tell anybody that your show is the next Hamilton.
Cringy. Yeah, don't do it. I've never, all I can ever say is like, I think people would respond to it, but who knows?
Larry Daggett says, from what I understood, and I didn't know this, from what I understood, it was the video of the making of the cast album that was a big part of the social media buzz about the show. Is that correct?
I think that that video is more of a byproduct of the success of the video is more of a byproduct of the social media buzz. The thing that helped it was the video of Michael in the bathroom, which is like the most watched video in the history of Ghostlight. However, I got Ghostlight to make that video after it was like it was already a thing. You know, it was like we were already pretty huge.
So you
And
did have a business thought there. You just said, "Hey, wait, we should do a video of this because people are talking about the song. Let's do a video." So
oh
that
yeah,
was your idea.
yeah, for sure. For sure.
Okay.
And we did an unboxing, because it was like the show had been closed for 2 years. And so it was like, what can we do to give people who are suddenly interested in this thing that isn't running? And the crazy thing about it was that because it was predominantly young people, they didn't have any concept of it not existing somewhere. Like they were listening to it and it would be this constant, every day I would get messages, I can't find a schedule for Be More Chill anywhere. And it would be like, because it's not playing anywhere, it only exists on Spotify, but they couldn't understand, like, well, then why am I listening to it if it doesn't exist anywhere?
So everybody's going to start saying, instead of my show's the next Hamilton, they're going to say my show is the next Be More Chill. I have that. I have that in the chat. Okay, good idea, everyone. So let's get beyond Be More Chill. Tell us about the projects that you've worked on since then and are working on right now.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that Broadway Bounty Hunter. It played here, right? It played.
So Broadway Bounty Hunter played the summer of 2019 in a commercial off-Broadway run. And I love that show very much. We did a cast album of it. Everyone should check out the cast album. The premise of that show is a musical theater actress in her late 60s who's really down on her luck. Everything's kind of going bad in her life. She can't get a job. Her husband is dead. They're about to turn off her power. She gets wrapped up in the world of bounty hunting, and the show is an action adventure musical that follows this musical theater actress played by Annie Golden.
I was going to say, that was Annie Golden? I was going to say,
Golden,
I was afraid to say because I would be so wrong if I had said it and it wasn't her.
You would be so wrong, but you're very right.
Yeah.
It's her in South America, and it's
love Annie Golden.
Inspired. Oh, she's the best. Inspired by blaxploitation and kung fu films of the 70s.
Just so you know, Larry Daggett saw a great Broadway Bounty Hunter, and it was great.
Oh,
all
cool.
Caps, great. And forget the Times review. You got a Daggett review now.
That's all I need.
Yeah. Let's see what else is going on.
So I got that. I
know you got the Hunter Arnold musical or something like that. What is that? The Hunter Thompson. Hunter
Thompson. Yeah. So I just got back from La Jolla Playhouse where we did a workshop of it's called the Untitled Unauthorized Hunter S. Thompson musical, and it's a show that I've been working on for many years, and it's about Hunter S. Thompson, and hopefully we'll do it next summer at La Jolla. That's the hope/goal.
So you're right in there. You're working. Let me see if there are any other questions. What are your opinions of do live recordings of concert version of your musical if you can't afford a cast LP? Okay, that's an interesting question. Would you ever do a live recording of your musical in 54 Below or something like that, as opposed to that would cost a lot less than a cast album, definitely.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, like I'm a proponent of, if you can stand behind it, if you feel like the recording, the video, the whatever is a good representation of your work, put it out in the world. I think, that it's the world that we live in. And I feel like, theater people, myself included, have always sort of had this kind of protective thing with material, this idea of like, because that's, it makes sense, because when you go to see a piece of theater, it's like you should be surprised by the stuff, right? You should be hearing stuff for the first time. That's just not the world we live in now. And so I think that a way to adapt to that world and take advantage of what that world can offer is to be less precious about holding on to your stuff. If you feel good about it. If you have a recording that sounds like shit, don't put it out in the world, And so I think that's the thing that in and of yourself, would I be happy or would I be embarrassed if somebody heard this? And if you'd be happy, then put it out there.
Well, in general, we all have to have the courage to put it out there. many of us are very very delicate, and I don't know how many of us would survive three bad New York Times reviews. So I give you a lot of credit for that, and
I, yeah,
I
I got
also
more
would
than
like
I got
to
more
what?
than three. Only three for one show.
Oh, okay.
I think I
But I
have
want to also
six or
say
seven total.
that that is not any kind of judgment of artistry. The Times Review it's just a phenomenon that a lot of us thought was actually dying out finally. I'm not sure. I thought a couple years ago, I thought that the Times Reviews really were not holding as much power as they used to.
Yeah, they just do. They do for a certain type of show. For for Moulin Rouge, they don't. Moulin Rouge happened to get a fabulous Times review, but it doesn't matter so much for shows like that. But for a real show, like for a show that like is coming from the brains of someone, it just matters, which is a bummer. But however, I just also want to say the only reason I'm talking so much about them is because we're talking about business stuff. As far as what they mean, they mean less than nothing. It's like, I mean, and it's
Let's put it this way: it doesn't help.
It's the
in a business that's very difficult and very precarious. It doesn't help.
Yeah, sure, no, for sure. But I mean, as artistically,
Yeah.
it's like, please, it's nothing. It's just because they do affect business things because people.
I want you to know that you're a lot tougher than I am, because my one and only off Broadway show, I got scathed by John Simon, if you remember who that was.
Yeah, of course,
And
brutal.
I couldn't write for like a year or two after that. I was just
I get it. It is so hard, and people don't. It's easy to say, oh, reviews don't matter, or whatever, but it's so hard. It's really rough. But you just have to remember these people. They don't matter. I think Frank Rich was a great writer. He was a monster, but but he was a great writer. He's fun to read. I love film criticism. I think there have been lots of really amazing writers who also happen to be critics.
Here's a question that I'm not sure that I know this. Have you been involved in the book for your shows? I know music and lyrics. So you also deal with the book. But do you always have a collaborator?
So
have you done shows where it's just been you?
I have, yeah. So on the writing side, I've done shows where I've just written music and lyrics. Someone else written the book. I've done shows where I've done music and lyrics, collaborated on the book, and I've done shows where I've done all three. On the shows where I've done all three, it never feels like I'm by myself because I'm so collaborative. I work so collaboratively with the director, no matter what I'm doing, that I've never felt like I was like writing a solitary show, even though on paper I have. I like working with a director in the way I'd work with another book writer,
Well, here's the thing. I mean, on my off-Broadway show, but because I did book music and lyrics, and I always advise people not to do that.
Mm-hmm.
My problem because I had done book music and lyrics for the rehearsal period and the previews and all that, I was pulled in three different directions, and I found it very very difficult to be all three at the same time in terms of rewrites.
You
didn't go through that?
Oh no, of course I did. But
it was a nightmare.
It is. There is like a clarity to it that's sometimes nice. But for me, it comes from a purely artistic place, where like the shows where I've done all three, those are shows that were totally original ideas that were born out of my own brain, and it just kind of happened. And before I knew it, I was like writing all three. And so it's just kind of like, well, this is what it is, and I got to figure out how to deal with this. But it's funny, when I was working on the Hunter show, I was the sole writer, and you do a run through or something, and it's like I'll be like, okay, I've gotten good about saying, okay, this run through, I'm going to try to just wear my composer hat. So I'm going to be listening to music stuff and sound stuff and all that, and not worry so much about book or something. And I've gotten good at like compartmentalizing that way. And we did a run through, and the director was like, this actor, it's like I think he forgot like half a scene, and I was like, what did he? He was like, yeah, like the whole scene was gone. I was like, I don't even know, because I was so focused on like the underscore of the scene.
I had the last show of mine that was done in a very small little festival. I told the director ahead of time that I had reasons for doing this particular version of it. I wanted to hear I had written the show for piano, cello, and flute, and four male voices, and I wanted to hear it. I wanted to see if the music actually worked. So I told her that my purpose of doing that particular iteration of the show was to learn about the instrumentation on it. And I said, you're going to have to really expect me to be focused on that. So she asked me all of the book questions before we went into rehearsal, and I took care of it. And I'm sure she wanted more changes, but I couldn't be two places at once.
Yeah, you can only do so much. You're only one brain, as they say.
If there's anybody else in the room whose questions I haven't taken out of the chat and you would like to ask it, I find it actually easier if you just turn on your unmute yourself. That is, don't necessarily turn on the video, but unmute yourself and ask him, because sometimes I don't know why you're asking the question, and I don't know if I get the answer that you're looking for. So, like
that was harsh.
Yeah, Nancy, do you want to ask?
Sure. Yeah. Hey, Joe. I just want to ask you, because I live in Malaysia, which is a low-cost country. Obviously, it's very far away from New York, and so it doesn't make sense for me to do any production in New York. Although I do have friends there, I have quite a few. But I want to ask you: do you have somebody doing your social media coordination? Because whenever we're doing like green screen recording, we did a whole cast kind of promotion video, which is going to be coming out pretty soon, next week, I think. And it was really hard for me. I'm old school. I'm an older person, and I don't necessarily
Nancy, get to the question, because I want to.
My question is, how do you coordinate the launch of your music video? Like for Michael in the bathroom, it looked like a scene that you might have thought about. Okay, am I consciously going to launch that at the same moment that I'm making the cast recording and releasing that on iTunes? Or was it accidental that it came out and that somebody in your fan club took hold of it and then started to promote it? That is it strategic in the sense that you have someone managing that behind the scenes for you?
It's yeah, in the case of Michael in the bathroom, that wasn't strategic. It was strategic in so much that insofar as I realized that song was taking off, and so I urged the record company to make a video to capitalize on that. But in general, I try to be really strategic about releasing things. You know, I released a 44 song album called Album this June, and it has a lot of my standalone theater songs on it. And the release of that was really specific about the images and the content and the videos that we were putting out and when we were putting them out. And you know, and because I'm working with, you know, Ghostlight's a wonderful company, but it's not a, you know, sort of major record label. So it's sort of, you know, they kind of rely on you to do.
It's what we got right now.
It's what we got. I mean, they're incredible. They're amazing, but it's like they can only do so much. It's a pretty small kind of mom and pop operation. And so it's on you.
There's also Shikaboom.
Yeah.
You're hooked up with Shikaboom too, right? Aren't you?
So Shikaboom and Ghostlight are the same thing.
Oh, they are.
Yeah.
Oh, I should know that. I don't know stuff. I don't.
Oh no,
know.
it's But so you know, the cool thing about social media and all of that sort of stuff is that it's free. It's free, and you can do it yourself. And so I happen to be pretty adept at that stuff. However, I have a person who helps me with social media stuff, because there are certain, like, I'm really good on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I'm less good on TikTok, which is like the new thing. And so this very amazing person helps me with all the TikTok stuff, and she helps me, you know, stay current on things. And so I think that with all of that stuff, it's really just good to know, like anything, to know what you don't know, and to you know, to the best of your ability, get someone to help you with all of that stuff. But as far as like the releasing of things, yeah, I think it helps to be, you know, strategic and to try to release things concurrently and have a rollout plan, and, you know, treat it treat it like it is, the hot new album coming from
Mhm.
Nancy Genster,
Okay, we're at 6:48 now, so you're way past the time that you were expecting to be here.
I'm good. I got like five more minutes, if that's
5 more
cool.
minutes. Larry
Yeah,
Daggett, do
sure.
you have a quick question? And Jeffrey
Yeah,
also.
Joe. Hey, Joe, thanks so much for talking to us.
Yeah.
If I understand this correctly, you said you had never done a production of any of your shows that hadn't first had a recording made. And then after you have that recording, then what do you do? You just pick up the phone and call iTunes and Apple and Spotify and say, "Hey, I've got this recording. You want to take it?" I mean, what's the step?
I heard him say the opposite. I heard him say that he never does recordings before, that he doesn't do demos.
It's so what I said was I've never, so I perform live all the time. I have a very active concert life, and so I'll do songs from upcoming shows in concerts. I was just sort of speaking to I was sort of speaking to like this idea of being protective about the material before it's in a show. And so that's what I was saying there. But anytime I've released an album, it's always come from a production. You know what I mean? So it's always been like, it's always been a cast recording of a production that just happened. I have shows that have had productions that do not have cast recordings, but all the cast recordings I have are that. And then the album that I put out this summer is all, for the most part, all standalones.
And then do you just call up iTunes and Spotify and Apple and say, "Hey, I've got this recording"?
Essentially, yeah. Like and anyone can get a recording onto streaming sites. There are different services that you go through, and I'm blanking on all of the names now. But it's literally just like you contact them, and then they let you know what they need from you as far as files and artwork and all of that sort of stuff, and they put it on the sites. And it's like it's different. There's ones that do Apple, there's ones that do Spotify, but it's all, there's no sort of gatekeeper there. Anyone can have their music on any of those sites, and you pay a little fee. And
well, that's great. Thank you so much. Thank you.
That was the 5 minutes. Jeffrey and Drew, I have to apologize to you, but I can't keep this man much longer.
I'll do 2 more questions. I'm just hanging out.
I keep saying quick questions, and they're never quick. Jeffrey, do you have a quick question?
Try to make it quick. So, Joe, as you are considered still sort of leading edge as a composer, what are your thoughts about how music is changing in musical theater, how that's influencing you, and what do you see coming down the road for us?
I get really turned on by musical theater that I think is good writing, and less turned on by musical theater that has a like quote unquote contemporary sound. I love something like I love Strange Loop a lot. And for me, musically, Strange Loop is like pretty traditional, I think. And there's nothing about that show that feels like the sound of it or the orchestration of it is particularly like cutting edge. But the lyrics and the content are so contemporary and so edgy and all that. So that, stuff like that feels really writer driven and writer centric, that's the stuff that excites me. And it's encouraging for me. It's more encouraging to see stuff like that on Broadway than it is like, jukebox musicals that have like contemporary songs in them. The jukebox musicals that are trying to be sort of performatively contemporary feel like they're going to age pretty poorly to me. So I'm less like, oh, that's the future of Broadway. And I think the future of well, not of Broadway, but the future of musical theater are shows like Strange Loop, or at least I hope. I hope. And I love the idea of theater being, or let's just say Broadway. I like the idea of Broadway. I like the idea of Broadway being a place where it can, we can have the the Moulin Rouges and the Mrs. Doubtfire, the musicals, and the Beetlejuice, the musicals, living in the same world as, as Strange Loop, or as, Six even, or, I think the sort of, there's room for all of it is something that's exciting to me. But I guess I'm most excited to see stuff that feels like it's honest and writer driven and good.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah.
All right. And our last question is going to be from Drew.
Hi, I saw you at the Theater Makers Conference perform a couple of years ago before the pandemic, and you gave a keynote address. So my question is, I have a couple of professional singers that want to sing songs from a show that hasn't been put on stage yet.
Mhm.
And my lawyer's telling me not to do that, not to give the sheet music out. What are your thoughts on that?
Is there a reason why? Like, why?
She just is very protective until it's like, registered in the copyright office. But of course that doesn't happen until you have a final version, right?
Yeah, no, don't worry about that at all. If they're gonna do the song, there's gonna be proof of them singing your song. And so like, no one is gonna steal your song. And if anyone did, you'd be able to prove that you wrote it. I think that's another thing that's like, we're living in a world where like information and content, everything is out there. Everything is there. People have access to all of it. And it's, it's something that I think we don't need to worry about being protective of our stuff because people might steal it in a way that I think maybe we used to. So yeah,
I unofficially agree with that. I always am amazed at how people. We are in a very litigious society. It's true, but your work is your work. If somebody and everybody's not only afraid of you stealing the work, they're afraid that somebody will steal your idea. Well, you know what? You can't copyright the idea, and it's just you just have to trust that what you do with your idea is unique and maybe better than what anybody else is doing with that idea. You just have to believe in your own abilities.
Yeah, for sure. And you can copyright, you can register, your work as soon as you write it. Like you don't necessarily need a production to do that. So if you feel like you want to protect yourself, that's something you can easily do.
Well, I hate to end on a note about law, but here we are, aren't we? Joe, I got to thank you so much for this. I'm probably going to ask you some other favors, so expect an email from me.
I can't wait.
Okay. Now I'm going back into speaker view, and I'm going to take the screen and thank everybody for being with us today, particularly my guest, Joe. You've been just terrific. And,
thanks, friends.
Thanks to everybody in the room. Thanks for being here, being part of True every week. I appreciate that so much. I appreciate your support of True. Those of you who are watching this out there or in podcast or YouTube or wherever you are, you are perfectly welcome to be part of the community, to come here on Fridays and be part of the room and ask questions and talk to the people that I have as guests. So you can email me at trunltd@aol.com. That's trunltd@aol.com. And yes, I do have an AOL account. Yes, I do. So we will send you the link every week if you want to be part of this, and we would welcome you. We do this for free. We do it as a community service. We also allow you to pay what you can. So pay what you can is a real thing. We really hope that you'll support us with a small donation. If you want to support us with a small donation, or if you want to come to the room and pay a registration fee, we have a free option, but we also have different levels of support that you can give us. The place to go right now is TrueDonate, TRUDonate.com. TrueDonate, TRUDonate.com. So thanks, and hope to see everybody next week. We have Victoria Lang and Ryan Bogner of Broadway and Beyond Theatricals. That's it, Broadway and Beyond Theatricals, which is a company that's dedicated to touring and to building tours into your production plan. They're very interesting, and they're currently represented on Broadway right now with The Kite Runner. So come join us next week, and I'll keep coming up with things every week. I don't know how I do it. If you want to send me an email and suggest a topic or a speaker, hey, that would be great. And that's it. and this is where I'm going to cut.